Re-Zero, Volume 7, Chapter 2A, Eve of the Decisive Battle. Slaying the White Whale. With negotiations concluded, everyone involved acted quickly to make the word hunt a reality. Just as the two merchants, Anastasia and Russell, had proclaimed, weapons and equipment were scrounged up from all over the royal capital, with Crush mustering the punitive force she'd prepared beforehand. The rest, arranging dragon carriages to transport the additional people and supplies, was taken care of in short order. With so many dragon carriages being hired for this, no wonder I had so much trouble finding one to get back to Roswell Manor. As Subaru watched people and goods rapidly flow in and out of the mansion, he realized how much had been happening behind the scenes during the loop, completely without his personal involvement. During his previous trips, though, Crush and Wilhelm had already been preparing to fight the white whale, even while Subaru was off in his own little world. Subaru had a rude awakening when he finally realized it after all that time. He'd caused them trouble on 3 different occasions. He wondered if there was anything he could do to help. Hey, if there's anything I can... Subaru, there's nothing at all you can do, is there, meow? Hey, I said if. Subaru, swept up by the busy atmosphere, was on the verge of offering some kind of help, but Ferris, concealing a yawn with a hand over his face, followed Subaru's half-hearted attempt. Don't assume other people share your laid-back attitude. Even I must have something I can... Preparing supplies and organizing troops are both outside of your areas of expertise, aren't they, Subaru? And we can't have outsiders running all around, so sit and behave, okay? Well, I can't do that. It's just that I'm the one who said, let's do this, and everyone else is working into the dead of night while I'm... That's where you're dead wrong. With Subaru all worked up, Ferris thrust a finger into the tip of his nose, interrupting with some terse words. Forced into silence, Subaru yelped as Ferris flicked his nose as he spoke. Ferry really doesn't like that it's all my fault way of thinking, or rather, I hate it. I really am the reason why they're pulling an all-nighter, though. It seemed strange for him to blithely sit around and quietly wait for the results. Nowadays, everything's all about the royal selection, but way back when, Crush was just a normal, adorable princess without any thoughts of participating in kingdom politics. Huh? Did the princess part throw you off? She's always looked lovely, but Lady Crush has become so strong and gallant since then that men can't keep up. Subaru, bewildered by the topic's sudden onset, felt length behind as Ferris's cheeks flushed. Ferris let out a flustered sigh, swooning at the image of the young Crush in the back of his mind as he continued. Lady Crush is kind, wonderful, and invincible, earnest and valiant, and more forthright than anyone. But the reason Lady Crush turned into this Lady Crush, strong enough to aim for the throne, is because she was at a certain someone's side. What are you talking about? And what do you mean, a certain someone? His Highness Fourier Lagunica, the nation's late 4th prince. Subaru, completely lost in this conversation, drew in his breath just a little at Ferris's words. But he had more reasons for being at a loss for words than surprise at the name of a dead person he never knew. The fleeting, sad look on Ferris's face when he spoke the name had grabbed his attention. His smile included a feeling of nostalgia and loneliness, but somehow also a faint measure of pride. Even keeping his gender in mind, it was a beautiful sight that left Subaru short of breath. Watching you, Subaru, makes me remember Prince Fourier just a tiny little bit. Was he someone with the mean-looking face? Nah, he was handsome. You're not even in his league, Subaru. But the willful personality, the simplicity, the pure, blatant conceit. Well, I won't say any more, since it might insult him. I think that's already pretty insulting. And also a backhanded slap at me, too. Apparently, it was their shared character flaws rather than similar faces that had gotten Ferris all sentimental. Sadly, Subaru couldn't deny any of them. But Ferris shook his head at Subaru's words. Prince Fourier was a confounding man to deal with, but he tried his very best. He always worried about how to act properly as a royal, and his inspirations caused all kinds of trouble for those around him. The prince wasn't talented, but he was full of drive, and he'd always listen to anything you wanted to ask him. Meow. Sounds like a pretty difficult guy to handle. That's right. He'd say, when everyone is working so hard, I simply cannot bear to be the only one standing still. Just like you are now, Subaru. But His Highness would never ever say anything like, "'Tis my fault." He wasn't someone to consider it, or even to think it at all. The strange smile Ferris wore as his reminiscing words trailed off showed how much he cared for the prince. Was that really such an important person? Subaru wondered, before it finally dawned on him. The fourth prince of the kingdom of Lagunica, and this Fourier person they were speaking about, had died in the plague that became the impetus for the royal selection. And if he was the reason why Cruche was aiming for the throne, that would mean. So this Prince Fourier and Cruche were close. They were similar in age, and Prince Fourier visited Lady Cruche's mansion a great deal. He'd drop in here and there, making an excuse every time, but he was bad at hiding things, so his real goal was obvious. Ferris made a little smile as he cast his thoughts back in time, including Subaru and how Fourier felt. Ferris and Cruche's relationship went beyond that of mere lord servant or man and woman. But for that Fourier person to be included in that relationship was no doubt very important to Ferris. The relationship between the three was probably very special and very precious. 95% of the fairy you see now is all because of Lady Cruche. But the most important part of that remaining 5% is thanks to Prince Fourier. That I'm sure of. The way Ferris gently lowered his eyes and put a hand to his chest as he spoke gave Subaru an odd feeling deep inside. Until then, he'd been firmly convinced that Ferris had never opened his heart to anyone besides Cruche. He thought it might be the healer's experience related to life and death that let Ferris duel out looks cruel enough to give people chills. When Ferris spoke about how he remembered Fourier, there was not even the tiniest trace of that. But what? You feel friendliness from me that's the same as what you felt from this Fourier person? Huh? Why does that make Subaru and Fourier the same? I'll kill you. That's so mean it's scary. The sharp, impaling voice and dangerous look in his eyes made Subaru retreat a step, unnerved. Saying this, Ferris cleared his throat. That's not how I meant it. I'm not going out of my way to talk to you about this right now because of that, Subaru. Ah, sheesh. Why don't you understand already, idiot? Hey, that's not even the tiniest bit reasonable. The conversation jumped everywhere, so I don't get it. What do you want from me anyway? Ferris stamped his foot on the floor in annoyance, with Subaru still cringing as a loud voice responded. Subaru, Master Felix, you're both speaking rather loudly. Is something wrong? Rem, ostensibly packaging luggage in the guest room, heard the ruckus and came down the stairs. Seeing the worried look on Rem's face, Subaru scratched his head, unsure how he ought to explain things. I was thinking that maybe I could help out with something, but Ferris was saying I'd be in the way. Now I'm not even sure what he was trying to tell me. Subaru, you're just awful at putting things together. Sheesh, I tried to tell you. It's all because you tried to get in the way of everyone's work. Don't call it getting in the way. I want to help. I mean, all this started because of me. It's that. Ferris lifted his face, powerfully interrupting Subaru's meandering words. Then, the cat ears on his head made a little twitch as he poked a finger into Subaru's chest. Subaru, I hate how you say because of. It's not because of, it's thanks to. That's why everyone's pulling an all-nighter, and why Old Man Will finally has a chance to fight the white whale. Thanks to me? Subaru quizzically tilted his head at the words that didn't seem real to him. Rem, standing close by, smiled at Subaru, agreeing with Ferris's satisfaction. Competing the royal selection, fighting the white whale, it's not really for Lady Crucia's own benefit. It's for everyone. With Subaru cowed into silence, Ferris continued on. Hunting down the white whale is Old Man Will's fondest wish. Apparently, he wasn't able to be at his wife's side when the white whale took her, the previous sword saint. The previous sword saint. To take his revenge, Old Man Will chased after the white whale like he had a death wish. Without anything concrete to go on, it was a lot like trying to grab mist with your hand. He recorded the places the white whale appeared, the time of day, the weather. For that, we went all over the place, testing different hypotheses, and finally, he figured out that there's something like an order to it. Subaru wondered just how deep Wilhelm's vindictiveness ran. Everyone knew of, and feared, the demon beast of mist, a mighty foe in no small part due to how everything about the creature was shrouded in mystery. And yet, all alone, this elderly man continued to struggle against that being. But when he finally figured it out, no one would believe a word he said. So the aged swordsman had spent night after night nursing his desire for vengeance as he pored over tomes with bloodshot eyes. Yet, when his fervor finally turned up a tangible lead, no one had the power to act on it. The kingdom's wounds from the great expedition still run deep. With the throne vacant, there wasn't anyone who could help Old Man Will. No one had the will to fight the white whale, or the resources to spare. I think Old Man Will was probably on the verge of despair when he couldn't find anyone to cooperate with him. Wilhelm had yearned for vengeance, yet he could not even crawl to the foot of his hated foe. Subaru knew the despair that came from crushing helplessness, for weakness was a sin that he himself couldn't escape. It seems like he thought about leaving behind everything and everyone he knew to fight the white whale completely alone. I think his shame from not fighting it was outweighing the fact that he couldn't win. Men really are idiots. His wife wouldn't have wanted him to do that, I'm sure of it. I suppose not. Yes, it was Rem, silent to that point, who agreed with Ferris. Rem attached a hand to her own chest as she gently glanced at Subaru with her pale blue eyes. I want the person I love to be happy forever. Even if I am gone, I want to be remembered with a smiling face. It's way too soon to talk about remembrances, you know. Subaru couldn't help turning down Rem's sentimental words. He reached out with his hand and gave Rem's head a tiny poke, and gently touched her with his palm and caressed her. Rem fondly narrowed her eyes at Subaru's open outburst of emotion. And then it was Lady Cruche who approached Master Wilhelm. Ferris nodded, averting his face with a distant look in his eyes. That's because Lady Cruche is truly kind at heart. She'll reach out to someone drowning in grief and despair, or speak to a person everyone's turned their backs to, and she'll help anyone who wants to take care of someone precious to them. She'd say that's what His Highness would do. For a moment, Ferris closed his eyes. Then he shifted his face with a normal expression on it, sticking out his tongue. All right, weird talk over. It was a long talk, but the point is, Subaru, you don't need to brood over this one itsy bit. Besides, it's not like we're doing any of this for your sake anyway. No one's as interested in you as much as you think they are. Maybe you were trying to hide your embarrassment or something, but that was actually mean. It's all right, Subaru. I am very interested in you. If this is what others think of you, then my feelings are 10 times stronger. That's scary too. After Ferris's harsh statement came Rem's very different follow-up. Buffeted by both, Subaru nonetheless tried to understand the core of what they were telling him. Man, that was a convoluted conversation. That, oh, now I understand attitude really annoys me. Meow. That's Subaru for you. All that said, your tongue is still somewhat too glib, Ferris. Meow? Though he had adopted a blunt demeanor, Ferris jumped in surprise at the voice that suddenly came from behind. Anxiously, he looked back to see an aged gentleman standing behind him, arms folded. Wilhelm's sharp stare seemed to make Ferris shrink. I cannot say it's a good hobby to speak excessively of a man's shame to others. It's nothing to be ashamed of, meow. It's like a fairy-style literary deconstruction of old man Will's character. Ferris brought his fingers from both hands together and stuck his tongue out in a flirty pose. For all the world, he seemed like a pretty, adorable, cat-eared girl, but sadly, he was very much a guy. Of course, that sex appeal was unlikely in the extreme to work on Wilhelm. At any rate, do not prattle so much about a person without his permission. Got it. Curtly dressed down, Ferris's shoulders drooped as he meekly backed away. It was just like Ferris to bid them farewell, only to slip in a wink at the end. But it was Subaru whose mental state was in chaos. Having unintentionally heard all the details about Wilhelm's past, he couldn't help feeling guilty. He thought briefly about divulging his own past embarrassments to make up for it, but he could imagine what kind of scorched earth landscape that would leave, so he firmly rejected the idea. As a result, the silence continued unbroken, with a bead of sweat trickling down Subaru's brow. My apologies you had to hear that unpleasant tale. I do not wish to waste your time with an old man's trivial delusions. Please forget them. It was Wilhelm who broke the silence, trying to act like the conversation earlier had never happened. Seeing the painful smile on his face, Subaru silently resolved to respect his wishes. Ask nothing, said Wilhelm's silent wish, so we would ask nothing. You truly love your wife, don't you? Miss Rem? Subaru's shock was palpable. Rem had walked directly into a veritable minefield. Paying Subaru's nervousness no heed, Wilhelm raised an eyebrow for a moment before he replied. Yes, I love my wife. More than anything. More than anyone. No matter how much time may pass. Wilhelm's age itself gave his statement that much more weight. On several past occasions, Subaru had heard Wilhelm voice his feelings for his beloved wife. In those few moments, Wilhelm had conveyed just how dear his wife was to him. But now that he knew that these were Wilhelm's feelings for someone departed from this world, it stirred a different emotion deep within Subaru. If you will excuse me, preparations for tomorrow yet await. Please rest peacefully this evening. With the pair falling silent, Wilhelm turned his back to them and gently headed off. Tomorrow. As Wilhelm excused himself, Subaru spoke to him, spur of the moment. He stopped, but he did not look back when he started speaking. Tomorrow, Rem and I will be fighting with you. That is, as if we can sit back and watch while our allies face a powerful enemy. Don't worry, Rem can fight, and I have things to do too. Subaru piled onto his hastily spoken words, cutting off any rejection of his cooperation. And he added, Let's join our strength together and give that white whale bastard a real beating. I'll help in every way I can. Subaru raised the thumb of his right hand as he swore that he and Wilhelm would be comrades in arms. For a time, Wilhelm said nothing to his declaration. Then, my wife was a woman who loved to admire flowers. Haltingly, he replied to Subaru's oath in a very different tone. She did not care for the way of the world, and yet the sword loved her like none other. She was not permitted to live any life save one with the sword, and my wife came to accept that destiny. Subaru had personally witnessed the might of Reinhard, the current sword saint. The blessing of the sword saint granted the human body an absurd level of power, enough to define a person's future and narrow one's possibilities without limit. It is I who robbed my wife of the sword and made her abandon the title of sword saint. Once, Wilhelm had told Subaru that he was an aged swordsman with no talent. His current state had been achieved after offering half of his life to the sword. What setbacks must he have suffered? What nails must have been driven into his heart until he arrived at the dear wish? And then she abandoned the sword and became a woman, and my wife. All this she permitted so that she might live as Teresia instead of the sword saint. However, the sword did not forgive her. If she had abandoned the sword, how had she ended up part of the White Whale Expeditionary Force? However, Wilhelm's recollection did not touch upon that issue as he spoke. Subaru, I thank you. After a breath, he added, in tomorrow's battle, I shall find my answer with my own blade. I will be able to go where my wife rests. I shall finally be able to meet her. Leaving those words behind, Wilhelm departed the room for good. Subaru couldn't keep his entire body from trembling by the flood of emotions within him. As a fellow man, Wilhelm's determination could not fail to inspire a deep reverence within him. Wilhelm was a man earnestly, sincerely beholden to love. Subaru! Suddenly, Rem's voice echoed across the now silent room. Without a word, Subaru turned toward her, perfectly meeting Rem's gaze. If I am gone, will you remember me just as long? I don't want to hear that. It's bad luck. Speaking with a voice of dismay, Subaru gave Rem's forehead a little poke. When he touched Rem's forehead, she smiled with a happy expression, almost as if she'd received the reply she had been hoping for.